Everything was normal at 3:17 a.m. FedEx Flight 1285 took off perfectly into clear skies. 3 crew members. Routine cargo run to Alaska. Then at 31,000 feet, impact. The aircraft ripped apart. Metal screaming. 2 F-22 fighter jets heard the impossible transmission, "This is call sign Phoenix. I can save you." Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a perfect night for flying. Clear skies stretched endlessly over Memphis, Tennessee. The temperature was a comfortable 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind was calm, less than 5 knots from the south. Visibility was unlimited. You could see stars from horizon to horizon. The weather conditions were absolutely perfect for a routine cargo flight. FedEx Flight 1285 was just another normal cargo flight. One of thousands that FedEx operates every single night across the world. Nothing special about it. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make you remember this particular flight. Just a regular cargo run. A routine operation that FedEx crews did every single day without thinking twice about it. 3:17 a.m. Central Time. The Boeing 767-300F cargo plane sat on the tarmac at Memphis International Airport. Its 2 Pratt & Whitney engines were warming up. The big jet weighed 412,000 pounds fully loaded. It was a workhorse. Reliable. Strong. Built to carry cargo across long distances. Inside the cockpit sat 3 crew members. 3 professionals who had flown together many times before. They knew each other well. They trusted each other completely. Captain Marcus Hayes sat in the left seat. The commander's seat. He was 52 years old. Salt and pepper hair. Weathered face with lines around his eyes from years of squinting at instrument panels. He had been flying cargo planes for FedEx for 26 years. Before that, he flew for the Air Force. Total flying hours logged, 19,000. That is more than 2 full years sitting in a cockpit. He knew this route like the back of his hand. Memphis to Anchorage. He had flown it 147 times. First Officer David Chen sat in the right seat. He was 41 years old. Former Navy pilot. He had flown F/A-18 Hornets off aircraft carriers. After 10 years in the Navy, he had joined FedEx. Total flying hours, 11,000. Sharp, focused, professional. A pilot who never made mistakes. A pilot who followed procedures exactly. Behind them, at the flight engineer's station, sat Sarah Mitchell. She was 38 years old. Red hair pulled back in a ponytail. Wearing her FedEx uniform with pride. She had worked with FedEx for 12 years. Before that, she had been an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force. Total flying hours, 8,000. She knew every system on the Boeing 767. Every wire. Every hydraulic line. Every fuel pump. She could diagnose problems before they became serious. No passengers on this flight. Just the 3 crew members. This was a cargo-only flight. Pure freight. In the cargo hold behind them, 87 tons of priority packages. Letters going to businesses in Alaska. Documents that needed to arrive by morning. Medical supplies for remote hospitals. Computer parts for tech companies. Birthday presents for children whose parents had ordered them online. Medicine that someone desperately needed. Business contracts worth millions of dollars. All of it carefully loaded. All of it properly secured with cargo straps. All of it balanced perfectly to keep the aircraft's center of gravity within limits. Everything done by the book. Everything done according to FAA regulations. All heading to Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport in Anchorage, Alaska. Marcus looked at his flight plan one more time. The route was familiar. He had memorized it years ago. But he always checked. Always verified. That was what good pilots did. Memphis to Anchorage. They would fly north through Missouri, then Iowa, then Minnesota. Cross into Canada over Manitoba. Continue north through Saskatchewan and Alberta. Then over the Canadian Rockies into Yukon Territory. Finally west into Alaska and down to Anchorage. Total flight time, 6 hours and 15 minutes. They would arrive at 8:32 a.m. local time. They had done this exact route 147 times together. Marcus knew every waypoint. Every navigation beacon. Every major landmark. Every airport along the way in case they needed to make an emergency landing. FedEx 1285, you are cleared for takeoff, runway 36C, the tower controller said over the radio. FedEx 1285, cleared for takeoff, runway 36C, Marcus repeated back. Standard procedure. Always repeat the clearance to confirm you heard it correctly. Marcus looked at David. Ready? Ready, David confirmed, his hand on the throttles. Let us go to Alaska, Marcus said with a slight smile. The takeoff was perfect. Absolutely textbook. Marcus released the brakes. David pushed the throttles forward. The two Pratt & Whitney PW4000 engines spooled up to full power. The sound was deafening even inside the insulated cockpit. 124,000 pounds of thrust pushing the heavy cargo jet forward. The 767 began rolling down runway 36C. Slowly at first, like a heavyweight boxer getting up from his corner. Then faster. The acceleration built. Faster. Faster. The runway lights blurred past the cockpit windows. 100 knots, David called out, his eyes on the airspeed indicator. Check, Marcus responded, his hands firm but relaxed on the yoke. V1, David called. The speed at which they were committed to takeoff. After V1, if something went wrong, they had to continue the takeoff. They were going too fast to stop safely. Rotate, David said at exactly 160 knots. Marcus pulled back gently on the yoke. The nose pitched up. 10 degrees. The main wheel stayed on the runway for another second. 2 seconds. Then they lifted 2. The entire aircraft was airborne. Climbing. Rising into the pre-dawn darkness. Positive rate of climb, David confirmed, watching the altimeter and vertical speed indicator. The numbers were climbing steadily. Gear up, Marcus commanded. David moved the landing gear lever up. Hydraulic pumps whirred. The massive landing gear retracted into the belly of the aircraft with a series of solid thumps. 3 green lights changed to 3 red lights on the panel. Landing gear up and locked. Perfectly normal. The big cargo jet climbed through the pre-dawn darkness. Banking slightly left to intercept their planned course. Rising through 1,000 feet. 2,000 feet. 3,000 feet. Climbing at 2,500 feet per minute. The city lights of Memphis spread out below them. A glowing carpet of orange and white. Streets laid out in neat grids. The Mississippi River a dark ribbon cutting through the city. At 5,000 feet, Marcus reduced power slightly. The rate of climb decreased to 2,000 feet per minute. More fuel efficient this way. At 10,000 feet, they leveled off briefly while air traffic control cleared them to continue climbing. FedEx 1285, climb and maintain flight level 310, the controller said. That meant 31,000 feet. Climb and maintain 310, FedEx 1285, David repeated back. They continued climbing. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly as it should be on a routine cargo flight. At 18,000 feet, Marcus engaged the autopilot. The sophisticated computer system took over. It would fly the aircraft more precisely than any human could. It would maintain exact altitude, exact heading, exact airspeed. David ran through the cruise checklist, reading each item, checking each system, Marcus confirming each item, Sarah monitoring all the engine instruments and systems on her panel. Fuel flow, normal. Oil pressure, normal. Hydraulic pressure, normal. Electrical systems, normal. Pressurization, normal. Everything, normal. They reached 31,000 feet at 3:52 a.m. Level flight now. The autopilot made tiny adjustments to keep them exactly at altitude. The engine settled into a steady, economical cruise power setting. Sarah was reviewing fuel calculations. They had 45,000 pounds of fuel on board. Fuel burn was running at 7,200 pounds per hour. Perfectly normal for a 767 at this weight and altitude. They would land in Anchorage with 7,000 pounds remaining. More than enough reserve. David was eating a sandwich. Ham and cheese. He had packed it before the flight. He was relaxed. This was an easy flight. A milk run, as pilots called it. Nothing complicated. Marcus was updating the flight plan in the computer. Checking weather reports along their route. Everything looked good. No storms. No turbulence reports. No icing. Clear skies all the way to Alaska. It was a 6-hour flight they had all flown hundreds of times before. Marcus had flown this route so many times he could almost fly it with his eyes closed. David knew it well too. Sarah had memorized every fuel burn calculation for this exact route. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. Everything was boring in the best possible way. But you know what? Sometimes the difference between a routine night and a nightmare is just a split second. A moment nobody sees coming. A fraction of time when everything changes forever. And sometimes that nightmare starts with a woman who is supposed to be dead, waking up in a cargo hold at 31,000 feet. 14 hours earlier. Memphis International Airport. FedEx Cargo Facility. Building 6. A woman in her late 30s walked through the massive loading facility. The building was the size of several football fields. Bright fluorescent lights everywhere. The constant beeping of forklifts. The rumble of cargo containers being moved. The smell of jet fuel and cardboard boxes. She wore standard FedEx cargo handler coveralls. Dark blue. The FedEx logo on the back. Steel-toed work boots. A yellow high-visibility vest. A baseball cap pulled low over her eyes. Her ID badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. It read, Rachel Cooper, Cargo Supervisor, Employee Number 47821. She walked with purpose. Confident. Like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She had a tablet computer in her hand. Checking cargo manifests. Making notes. She supervised the loading of Flight 1285's cargo. She walked along the line of cargo containers. Checking the labels. Making sure each container was going to the right aircraft. Checking that the weight was written correctly on each label. She checked the load plan on her tablet. The computer calculated exactly where each container needed to go inside the aircraft. Front, middle, or back. Left side or right side. The distribution of weight was critical. If the cargo was loaded wrong, the aircraft's center of gravity would be off. That could make the plane unstable. Dangerous. She ensured proper weight distribution. Container 1, 4,200 pounds, forward cargo hold, left side. Container 2, 3,800 pounds, forward cargo hold, right side. And so on. Everything had to be balanced. This was standard procedure. She had done this exact job every night for the past 14 months. Checking manifests. Supervising loading. Making sure everything was done correctly. Making sure every flight left safely. Nobody knew who she really was. Nobody suspected anything. To her co-workers, Rachel Cooper was quiet and good at her job. She kept to herself. She worked the night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. She never talked about her past. If people asked personal questions, she gave vague answers and changed the subject. She never went to company social events. Never went out for drinks with co-workers after work. She was friendly enough, but distant. Professional but not personal. She was good at her job, but nothing special. Just another competent cargo supervisor. One of hundreds working at FedEx Memphis. Nothing remarkable about her. Except one thing, Rachel Cooper did not exist 15 months ago. The Social Security number on her employment application. Created 15 months ago. The driver's license in her wallet. Issued 15 months ago in Tennessee. Her work history before FedEx. All carefully fabricated. Names of companies that had gone out of business. Supervisors who had died or moved away. References that could not be verified. Rachel Cooper was a ghost. A phantom. An identity created from nothing. 15 months ago, the woman in those FedEx coveralls was Colonel Rachel Morrison, call sign Phoenix. United States Air Force Chief Test Pilot. The most brilliant, most talented, most fearless experimental aircraft pilot in modern military history. For 18 years, she had flown prototype aircraft that terrified other pilots. Aircraft that were experimental. Unproven. Dangerous. Aircraft that sometimes killed the pilots who flew them. She flew planes with systems deliberately damaged to test emergency procedures. She flew planes with one engine shut down to test asymmetric thrust handling. She flew planes with control surfaces disabled to test degraded flight control modes. She flew prototypes at supersonic speeds. She tested aircraft at the edge of their performance envelopes. She pushed planes to their absolute limits to find their breaking points, before those planes went into production and started carrying soldiers into combat. She was the pilot who flew what should not fly. The pilot who landed what should not land. The pilot who walked away from situations that should have killed her. Her call sign, Phoenix, came from her most famous test flight 5 years ago. She was testing an experimental stealth fighter. The X-47B. A revolutionary new design. Cutting-edge fly-by-wire controls. Advanced stealth capabilities. 2 powerful engines. The future of air combat. On that test flight, she was at 45,000 feet over the Nevada desert. Testing the aircraft's high-altitude performance. Pushing the throttles forward to test maximum speed at altitude. Then both engines failed. Complete flameout. Both engines quit at exactly the same time. No warning. No indication on any instrument. Just sudden, complete silence. 45,000 feet in the air. No engine power. No hydraulics. No electrical systems. Just a very expensive glider plummeting toward the desert floor. Standard procedure when you lose both engines at 45,000 feet is simple: eject immediately. Pull the ejection handle. Let the rocket seat fire you clear of the aircraft. Deploy your parachute. Float safely to the ground. Let the aircraft crash. That is what every pilot is trained to do. But Rachel Morrison was not like every other pilot. She looked at her instruments with absolute calm. She calculated her glide ratio. The X-47B had a glide ratio of about 15 to 1. That meant for every 1,000 feet of altitude, she could glide about 15,000 feet forward. Simple mathematics. 45,000 feet of altitude meant she could glide about 675,000 feet. That was about 128 miles if she could maintain optimal glide speed. She knew there was a backup test runway at Tonopah Test Range, Nevada. Distance, 89 miles. She could make it. If she flew perfectly. If she made no mistakes. But she also knew that if she ejected, the Air Force would lose a $300 million aircraft. Years of research and development would be destroyed in a fireball in the desert. Hundreds of engineers had worked for years on this project. All of that work would be gone. So in that split second at 45,000 feet, with 2 dead engines, Rachel Morrison made a decision: she would not eject. She would try to land it. She immediately put the nose down. Steep descent. She needed to maintain the optimal glide speed, exactly 230 knots. Too slow and the aircraft would stall and spin. Too fast and she would waste altitude with unnecessary drag. She transmitted on the emergency frequency: Tonopah Range Control, this is Raven 1, I have dual-engine flameout at flight level 450, attempting dead-stick landing on runway 14, souls on board 1. She glided that dead aircraft 89 miles across the Nevada desert. No engine power. No hydraulics. No electrical systems except battery backup. No autopilot. No flight computers. Just pure aerodynamics, skill, and willpower. The aircraft wanted to pitch and roll with no power. She fought it constantly. Small movements on the control stick. Keeping the wings level. Keeping the nose at exactly the right angle. At 20,000 feet, she could see Tonopah Test Range in the distance. The runway was visible. She was still high. She needed to burn off altitude. She made S-turns. Weaving left and right. Deliberately adding distance to burn off extra altitude without increasing speed. At 10,000 feet, she was lined up with runway 14. The runway was 15,000 feet long. More than enough for a normal landing. But this was not a normal landing. This was a dead-stick landing with no power and barely any control authority. At 5,000 feet, she deployed the landing gear manually. The gear fell down and locked under gravity alone. 3 green lights. Good. She was coming in fast. Very fast. 230 knots, about 265 miles per hour. Normal landing speed for this aircraft was 140 knots. But she had no engines to slow down. No thrust reversers to help stop. Just gravity, physics, and the brakes running on battery power. At 100 feet, she flared. Pulled back slightly on the stick to raise the nose. The main wheels touched down first. The impact was hard. She touched down at 220 miles per hour. The landing gear squealed. The brakes immediately went to maximum. She felt the deceleration. The aircraft shook violently. She rolled down the runway. 5,000 feet. 10,000 feet. 12,000 feet. The end of the runway was approaching fast. The aircraft finally stopped with just 400 feet of runway remaining. Complete silence. No engine sound. Just the ticking of hot metal cooling and the whistle of wind. Zero damage to the aircraft. She had saved it. She had saved $300 million and years of research. She had done what everyone said was impossible. The ground crew and emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft. They opened the canopy. They found Colonel Rachel Morrison sitting calmly in the cockpit. She was writing notes in her kneeboard. Documenting what had happened. Like it was just another day at work. Like she had just parked at the grocery store. "Are you okay, Colonel?" the crew chief asked, amazed. "I am fine," she said calmly. "But we need to figure out why both engines flamed out simultaneously. That should not happen." That was the day they started calling her Phoenix. The mythical bird that rises from fire and death. The creature that cannot be killed because it is reborn from its own ashes. She rose from certain death that day. And the nickname stuck. Call sign Phoenix. After that test flight, her reputation became legendary. She became the pilot everyone wanted for dangerous test missions. The pilot who could save any aircraft. The pilot who never gave up. The pilot who did the impossible. She flew more experimental aircraft than anyone else in Air Force history. She accumulated more test flight hours than any pilot in her generation. She flew aircraft with deliberately damaged flight controls to test how pilots would handle emergencies. She flew aircraft with asymmetric thrust, one engine producing full power, the other at idle, to test extreme handling characteristics. She flew aircraft at maximum speed and maximum altitude to find their performance limits. She flew what should not fly. She landed what should not land. That was her specialty. That was her gift. But then, 14 months ago, everything changed. She was testing another new fighter. The F-51 Wraith. The next generation of stealth fighter. Even more advanced than anything before. A $47 billion development program. The future of air superiority. She was conducting a high-G maneuver test. Pulling 9 gs, 9 times the force of gravity. At 35,000 feet over the Nevada desert. Then the aircraft came apart. Not engine failure. Not control system failure. Structural failure. The wings literally broke off the fuselage. One moment she was flying. The next moment the aircraft was tumbling. Falling. Breaking into pieces. She ejected. Pulled the ejection handle. The rocket seat fired. She was blown clear of the disintegrating aircraft. Her parachute deployed automatically. She floated down. She watched the F-51 hit the desert floor and explode in a massive fireball. She landed safely in the desert. Bruised. Shaken. But alive. The rescue helicopters arrived within 20 minutes. They took her back to Edwards Air Force Base. But before she left the crash site, she walked through the wreckage. She looked at the pieces. And what she saw made her blood run cold. The wing attachment points had failed. Catastrophic structural failure. But it was not a random failure. It was a design flaw. The wing structure could not handle high-G maneuvers. The metal had stress fractures. Cracks. Weaknesses that should have been caught in testing. She took photos with her phone. She collected pieces of metal. Evidence. Back at Edwards, she immediately went to her commanding officer. She showed him the evidence. She explained what she had found. The F-51 has a fatal design flaw, she said. The wing structure cannot handle high-G combat maneuvers. This aircraft will kill pilots. We cannot put this into production. We need to ground the entire program until this is fixed. Her commanding officer looked at the evidence. He looked at the photos. And then he looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Fear. Not fear of the design flaw. Fear of her. Colonel Morrison, this is a $47 billion program, he said quietly. The contractor has already built 12 aircraft. We have orders for 200 more. If we ground this program now, the contractor will lose billions. Politicians will lose their jobs. Careers will be destroyed. But pilots will die, Rachel said. If we put this aircraft into service with this design flaw, pilots will die. We will fix it quietly, he said. Over time. Through modifications. But we cannot ground the program publicly. Do you understand? Rachel understood perfectly. She was being told to stay quiet. To cover it up. To let a fatally flawed aircraft go into production because too much money was at stake. I cannot do that, sir, she said. I will not do that. 3 days later, she was called into a meeting with senior Air Force officers. Generals. High-ranking officials. Men with stars on their shoulders and decades of experience. They told her the same thing. Stay quiet. Do not report the design flaw publicly. Let them handle it quietly through back channels. She refused. 2 days after that meeting, she received an anonymous phone call on her personal cell phone. "Colonel Morrison, if you continue pushing this issue, you will have an accident," a voice said. Male. Calm. Professional. "We have invested too much in this program to let one stubborn pilot destroy it. Back off. Or you will regret it." Then the line went dead. She tried to report the threat. She went to the Inspector General. She filed official complaints. She documented everything. Nothing happened. Her complaints disappeared. The Inspector General's office said they found no evidence of wrongdoing. The investigation was closed. She realized then that the corruption went all the way to the top. Senior Air Force officers. Defense contractor executives. Politicians. All of them working together to cover up a fatal design flaw to protect a $47 billion contract. She had two choices: stay silent and let pilots die, or speak out and be killed. She chose a third option: disappear. 2 weeks later, she was conducting another test flight. A routine flight. Or so everyone thought. At 40,000 feet over the Nevada desert, her aircraft suffered catastrophic hydraulic failure. All 3 hydraulic systems failed simultaneously. The aircraft became uncontrollable. She transmitted a mayday call: "Edwards Control, Raven 1, I have total hydraulic failure, aircraft is uncontrollable, I am ejecting." The aircraft exploded in midair. A massive fireball. Debris raining down over miles of desert. Search and rescue teams found the wreckage. They found pieces of the aircraft scattered across the desert. They found her ejection seat. They found her helmet. But they did not find her body. Official conclusion: Colonel Rachel Morrison was killed on impact. Her body was destroyed in the explosion and fire. Remains were not recoverable. Memorial service was held 2 weeks later at Edwards Air Force Base. Full military honors. Flag-draped coffin, empty, because there was no body. Rifle salute. Taps played on a bugle. Her name was added to the memorial wall at Edwards. The wall of fallen test pilots. Heroes who died testing aircraft so that other pilots would be safe. Call sign Phoenix. Colonel Rachel Morrison. Killed in action. Gone forever. Except she was not dead. She had not died in that explosion. She had faked it. The hydraulic failure had been real. The aircraft had been uncontrollable. But she had not ejected. She had ridden the aircraft down to 5,000 feet. Low enough that the wreckage would be scattered enough to make finding a body difficult. Then she ejected. But she did not activate her emergency beacon. She landed her parachute miles away from the crash site in a remote area of the desert. She had a plan. She had been preparing for this for 2 weeks. She had supplies hidden in the desert. Water. Food. Civilian clothes. Cash. A fake ID that she had purchased from a forger in Las Vegas. She walked through the desert for 3 days. She stayed away from roads. Away from search teams. She covered her tracks. On the 4th day, she reached a small town on the California-Nevada border. She bought a bus ticket to Memphis, Tennessee using her fake ID. The ID said her name was Rachel Cooper. She arrived in Memphis 2 days later. She rented a small apartment. She applied for a job at FedEx as a cargo handler. They hired her after a basic background check. The fake identity held up perfectly. For 14 months, Phoenix was dead. Colonel Rachel Morrison was gone. Her name was on the memorial wall. Her service record was closed. Her personnel file was marked, deceased. Nobody was looking for her. Nobody knew she was alive. She became Rachel Cooper. Cargo supervisor. Night shift. FedEx Memphis. Just another worker. Just another face in the crowd. She kept her head down. She worked hard. She stayed invisible. For 14 months, she was dead. Until tonight. Until someone discovered she was still alive. And tried to kill her again. 3:17 a.m. FedEx Flight 1285 departed Memphis right on schedule. Rachel Cooper had finished her shift at 2:45 a.m. She had checked off all the cargo for Flight 1285. Everything was loaded correctly. Everything was secured. The aircraft was ready to go. But at 2:55 a.m., there was a problem. The cargo loading computer system crashed. A software bug. The system that tracked which cargo was loaded on which aircraft. Without that system, the pilots would not have an accurate weight and balance calculation. They could not take off without knowing the exact weight distribution of their cargo. Rachel stayed late to fix it. She manually entered all the cargo data into the backup system. Container by container. Weight by weight. Position by position. It took 20 minutes of careful work. Double-checking every entry. Making sure everything was exactly right. By 3:15 a.m., she was done. The system was working again. The pilots had their weight and balance data. The flight could depart on time. But Rachel was exhausted. She had worked a 16-hour shift. She should have worked 10 hours, but there had been problems all night. Equipment breakdowns. Staff shortages. Computer glitches. She walked through the facility toward the employee exit. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. She just wanted to go home. Take a shower. Sleep. But as she walked past Flight 1285, she remembered something. There had been a last-minute shipment addition. A medical container added at 2:30 a.m. Emergency medical supplies going to Anchorage. She wanted to double-check that it had been loaded in the correct position. That it had been secured properly. She walked into the cargo hold through the rear cargo door. The door was still open. The loading crew had just finished and left. She found the medical container. Position, forward cargo hold, right side. She checked the straps. Secure. She checked the weight label. Correct. Everything was perfect. She sat down on a cargo container for just a moment. Just to rest her feet for a second before walking back to her car. The cargo hold was quiet. Pressurized and temperature-controlled, comfortable. The overhead lights were dim. It was peaceful after 16 hours of noise and chaos. She closed her eyes for just a second. Just 1 second. And she fell asleep. She did not hear the ground crew close the cargo door at 3:10 a.m. She did not hear the aircraft being pushed back from the gate at 3:12 a.m. She did not hear the engine start at 3:14 a.m. She did not hear the aircraft taxi to the runway at 3:15 a.m. She did not wake up during the takeoff at 3:17 a.m. The cargo hold was dark, quiet, and comfortable. The aircraft vibration was gentle and rhythmic. Like being rocked to sleep. She slept through the climb to cruise altitude. She slept through the leveling off at 31,000 feet. She woke up 47 minutes into the flight when something massive struck the aircraft. In the cockpit at 4:04 a.m., everything had been going perfectly smoothly. They were cruising at 31,000 feet. The autopilot was flying beautifully. The engines were purring along at cruise power. The aircraft was stable and smooth. They were flying over the Canadian Rockies now. Far below, snow-covered mountains stretched to the horizon. But up here at 31,000 feet, the air was smooth and calm. Not a bump. Not a ripple. Perfect flying conditions. David had just finished his sandwich. He was drinking coffee from a thermos. He was reviewing the arrival procedure for Anchorage on his tablet. Making sure he knew all the approach charts. Good pilots always stayed ahead of the aircraft. Sarah was running fuel calculations on her computer. They were burning fuel exactly as predicted. Right on the flight plan numbers. They would arrive in Anchorage with 7,200 pounds of fuel remaining. More than enough. Marcus was updating the flight plan in the navigation computer. Adding expected winds aloft for the rest of the flight. Making small course corrections to optimize their fuel burn. It was quiet in the cockpit. Peaceful. Routine. Boring in the best possible way. Then the world exploded. A massive impact from the left side of the aircraft. The sound of metal tearing. The sound of aluminum ripping apart like paper. The sound of hydraulic lines bursting. The sound of a 400,000-pound aircraft being hit by something that should not exist. The impact was so violent that David's coffee cup flew out of his hand and splattered against the windshield. Every alarm in the cockpit started screaming. Master warning lights flashing red. Caution lights flashing amber. Bells ringing. Horns blowing. The flight warning computer announcing in a calm female voice, hydraulic system failure. Left hydraulic system failure. Flight control degradation. What the hell was that? Marcus yelled. The aircraft lurched violently to the right. Banking. Rolling. The left wing dropping. The right wing rising. Marcus grabbed the control yoke with both hands. He pulled to the left. Trying to level the wings. But the yoke felt wrong. Mushy. Not responding properly. Help me, he shouted to David. David grabbed the right control yoke. Both pilots pulled to the left. Using all their strength. The aircraft's bank angle was 35 degrees now. 40 degrees. Still increasing. Sarah was staring at her instruments in horror. Hydraulic pressure dropping on the left system. 3,000 psi. 2,000 psi. 1,000 psi. 0. We have lost the entire left hydraulic system. David looked out his side window. What he saw made him go pale. His voice came out as a whisper. Captain, there is a hole in the side of the fuselage. A huge hole. I can see stars through it. The aircraft has been torn open. Marcus was fighting the controls with everything he had. The 767 was rolling past 45 degrees now. If they went past 60 degrees, they would enter an unrecoverable spiral. They would spin all the way down to the ground. Flight controls are severely degraded. Marcus shouted. I only have maybe 40% aileron authority. The aircraft is not responding. He keyed the radio. Emergency frequency. 121.5 MHz. The frequency that everyone monitors. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is FedEx 1285, Boeing 767, we have been struck by an unknown object at flight level 310 over the Canadian Rockies. Major structural damage to the left fuselage. Complete loss of left hydraulic system. Flight controls are failing. We are in an uncontrolled roll. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Sarah was cycling through her systems trying to find out what still worked. Right hydraulic system holding at 3000 psi. Center hydraulic system is at 2500 psi and falling. We are losing fluid from somewhere. Can you see what hit us? Marcus demanded. David was still staring out the window at the damage. It looks like. I do not know. Metal debris. Something big. Something metallic. It is embedded in the fuselage. The aircraft was at 50 degrees of bank now. The nose was dropping. They were starting to spiral downward. Altitude was 30,200 feet and decreasing. Both pilots were pulling on the control yokes with all their strength. Their muscles were straining. Sweat was pouring down their faces. "We are losing this," David shouted. "We cannot hold it." And then, in the middle of this chaos, the cargo hold intercom crackled to life. A voice. Female. Calm. Steady. Impossibly calm given the situation. "Cockpit, this is cargo hold. I am a pilot. I can see the damage from here. I can help you." In the cargo hold, Rachel woke up to absolute chaos. One moment she was asleep. The next moment she was being thrown across the cargo hold. Her body slammed against cargo containers. The wind was screaming. Metal was groaning and tearing. The cargo hold was rapidly losing pressure. Air was rushing out through a massive hole in the left side of the aircraft. A gash 12 feet long and 3 feet wide. Torn metal. Jagged edges. Sparks flying from severed electrical wires. Freezing cold air at -40 degrees rushing in at 500 miles per hour. Cargo containers had shifted. Cargo straps were breaking. The aircraft was banking violently to the right. Rachel could feel herself being pulled toward the hole. She grabbed a cargo strap with both hands. Holding on with every ounce of strength. If she lost her grip, she would be sucked out of the aircraft. She would fall 31,000 feet to her death. But even in this moment of terror, her training took over. 18 years of flying experimental aircraft. 18 years of dealing with emergencies that would kill other pilots. 18 years of staying calm when everyone else was panicking. Her mind went into analysis mode. Assessment mode. Like a computer processing data. She looked at the hole. She looked at the damage. Fuselage breach. Approximately 12 feet by 3 feet. Rapid decompression underway. External temperature -40 degrees Celsius. Wind speed 500 knots. She could see through the hole. She could see hydraulic lines. 3 of them. Severed. Cut clean through. Orange hydraulic fluid spraying everywhere. Left hydraulic system, completely destroyed. She could see flight control cables. Some were severed. Some were damaged but still intact. Left aileron control, gone. Left elevator control, partially functional. The aircraft was in an uncontrolled right roll. Banking past 50 degrees. Maybe 55 degrees. The nose was dropping. They were entering a death spiral. Her analysis was immediate and crystal clear: this aircraft is critically damaged. Without intervention, it will enter an unrecoverable spiral dive within 60 seconds. All 3 crew members in the cockpit will die. And I will die with them. But she did not panic. She did not give up. That was not what Phoenix did. Phoenix rose from the ashes. Phoenix survived. She saw it mounted on the cargo hold wall. An intercom phone. Ground crews used it to communicate with the cockpit during loading operations. It was a direct line to the cockpit. She let go of the cargo strap with one hand. The wind immediately tried to pull her toward the hole. She grabbed another strap closer to the intercom. Then another. Moving hand over hand. Fighting the wind. Fighting the pull of depressurization. She reached the intercom. She grabbed the handset. She pressed the talk button. In the cockpit, Marcus and David were losing the battle. The aircraft was at 57 degrees of bank. Any moment now they would pass 60 degrees. Once they passed 60 degrees, the spiral would become unrecoverable. Physics would take over. They would spin all the way down. "David, help me. Pull." Marcus shouted. Both pilots pulled on the control yoke together. 6 hands total, both of Marcus's hands, both of David's hands, and Sarah had now grabbed the yoke from her position between the seats. 3 people pulling with everything they had. The aircraft slowly, grudgingly began to respond. The bank angle decreased slightly. 55 degrees. 53 degrees. But they could not hold it. The aircraft kept trying to roll right. They were fighting against damaged flight controls and asymmetric aerodynamic forces. They were losing hydraulic fluid. Every second they were getting weaker. Then the cargo hold intercom crackled to life. The sound was unexpected. Shocking. Nobody should be in the cargo hold. This was a cargo-only flight. A voice came through. Female. Calm. Professional. The kind of voice you would expect from an air traffic controller or a military pilot. Not from someone in a depressurizing cargo hold. Cockpit, this is cargo hold. I am a pilot. I can see the damage. I can help you. Marcus stared at the intercom mounted on the center console. His mind could not process this. Who was in the cargo hold? How? Why? Who the hell is this? He shouted over the screaming alarms. My name is Rachel Morrison. Colonel, United States Air Force, retired. Call sign Phoenix. I am a test pilot. I have 18 years of experience flying damaged aircraft. I can see your hydraulic damage from here. I know what happened to your flight controls. And I can tell you how to compensate for it. David grabbed the intercom. Lady, I do not know who you are or how you got in our cargo hold, but we do not have time for. Rachel's voice cut him off. Sharp. Commanding. The voice of someone who was used to being obeyed. You have a 12-foot hole in your left fuselage at frame station 640. 3 hydraulic lines are severed, lines A1, A2, and A3 of the left hydraulic system. Your left aileron and left elevator controls are compromised. You are trying to control the aircraft using only right-side flight controls. But you are bleeding hydraulic fluid from the center system as well. In approximately 8 minutes, you will have 0 hydraulic pressure remaining. When that happens, this aircraft will be completely uncontrollable and you will all die. Now, do you want my help or not? There was a moment of silence in the cockpit. Marcus made a split-second decision. They were dying. They had maybe 8 minutes left. What did they have to lose? Talk, he said. Fast. First, stop fighting the aircraft. You are wasting energy. Release pressure on the yoke for a moment. Marcus and David looked at each other. This went against every instinct. But they did it. They reduced pressure slightly. The aircraft immediately began rolling right again. Bank angle increasing. 55 degrees. 57 degrees. Now, Captain, I need you to use differential thrust. Increase power on your left engine to maximum. Do it now. Marcus pushed the left throttle all the way forward. The left engine spooled up to full power. The right engine stayed at cruise power. The asymmetric thrust created a yaw force. The aircraft's nose turned left. And as it turned left, the aircraft's roll tendency decreased. The bank angle stopped increasing. 57 degrees. Holding steady. Then slowly beginning to decrease. 55 degrees. 53 degrees. It is working. David shouted. Good, Rachel's calm voice continued. Now maintain that power setting. The differential thrust is compensating for your lost left aileron. You are using engine power to control roll. This is a technique we use in test flying when flight controls are damaged. Who are you? Sarah asked, amazed. Like I said, I am a test pilot. I have flown aircraft with worse damage than this and landed them safely. Now, listen carefully. Your hydraulic fluid is still leaking. You have maybe 7 minutes left before total hydraulic failure. When that happens, you will lose all power-assisted flight controls. You will be flying on manual reversion only. Manual reversion? David asked. We have never trained for that on a 767. I know. Most pilots have not. But I have. 73 times in various aircraft. Manual reversion means you will be muscle flying this aircraft. No hydraulic assist. It will take all three of you on the controls. You are going to need to work together like you have never worked before. What hit us? Marcus asked. Rachel had been examining the debris embedded in the hole. Pieces of metal. Electronic components. GPS antennas. She recognized the design. You were hit by a military drone. A U.S. Air Force MQ-9 Reaper. I can see parts of the fuselage right here. It has Air Force markings on it. That is insane, David said. Why would a military drone be in civilian airspace? This is a civilian air corridor. Because someone deliberately flew it into you, Rachel said quietly. This was not an accident. This was an attack. An attack? On a cargo plane? Why? Because I am on this aircraft. Someone found out that Phoenix is still alive. They tried to kill me 14 months ago. They thought they succeeded. But they found out I survived. And now they are trying again. Phoenix? Sarah said. I thought Phoenix was dead. Yes. I faked my death 14 months ago. Long story. I will explain later if we survive. Right now, we have more important problems. 40 miles to the northeast, two F-22 Raptor stealth fighters were flying a routine patrol mission out of Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. The lead pilot was Lieutenant Colonel Jake Harrison. Call sign, Viper. He was 42 years old. A veteran fighter pilot with 18 years of experience. 3,500 hours in F-22s. He had flown combat missions in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. His wingman was Captain Lisa Chen. Call sign, Dragon. She was 32 years old. A rising star in the fighter community. 1,200 hours in F-22s. They were monitoring the emergency frequencies as all military aircraft do. When FedEx 1285's Mayday call came through, they heard it immediately. FedEx 1285, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Viper immediately banked his F-22 toward the cargo plane's position. His radar locked onto the 767 immediately. Distance, 42 miles. Altitude, 30,000 feet and descending. He keyed his radio. FedEx 1285, this is Viper lead, U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptors. We are vectoring to your position. What is your situation? Marcus transmitted back, still fighting the controls. Viper, we have major structural damage. Complete loss of left hydraulic system. Flight controls are severely degraded. We were struck by an unknown object. And we have a woman in our cargo hold who says she is an Air Force test pilot. She says her name is Rachel Morrison. Call sign Phoenix. She is giving us instructions on how to fly this damaged aircraft. There was complete silence on the radio for 3 seconds. Then Viper's voice came back. But it sounded completely different. Shocked. Confused. Almost frightened. Say again your last. Did you say Phoenix? Yes. Phoenix. She says she is Colonel Rachel Morrison. Another long pause. Then, that is impossible. That cannot be. Colonel Rachel Morrison died 14 months ago in a test flight accident. I was at her memorial service. I watched them fold the flag. I watched them put her name on the wall at Edwards Air Force Base. She is dead. From the cargo hold, Rachel's voice suddenly came over the emergency radio. She had figured out how to patch the cargo intercom into the aircraft's radio system using a circuit breaker panel. "Viper, this is Phoenix. I did not die. I faked my death 14 months ago because they tried to kill me. It is a very long story and I will explain everything later. But right now, we have a critically damaged Boeing 767 with 3 crew members who are about to die unless we do something. I need you to trust me right now. Can you do that?" Viper's voice was shaking with emotion. "Phoenix. Is that really you? I flew with you at Edwards in 2018. You taught me how to recover from departure-resistant spins. You saved my life once when I had a hydraulic failure in an F-35. I remember, Viper. You did good that day. You kept your head. You followed procedures. You brought it back safely. I learned that from you, Phoenix. You were the best. Then help me now. Tell Elmendorf Command that Phoenix is alive and that I need help. We have a damaged cargo aircraft that needs to land as soon as possible. What is the nearest suitable airport?" Viper checked his navigation display. "Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, Canada. Distance 140 miles northeast of your current position. They have a runway that is 13,800 feet long. That should be long enough for an emergency landing. Tell them to clear the runway. Tell them to have every emergency vehicle they have standing by. This landing is going to be ugly. Roger that, Phoenix. We will stay with you until you are on the ground." Viper pulled his F-22 into formation with the damaged cargo jet. When he got close enough for a visual inspection, what he saw shocked him. The hole in the left side of the fuselage was massive. He could see completely through the aircraft. He could see cargo containers inside. He could see hydraulic fluid streaming out in orange mist. He could see the aircraft struggling to maintain any kind of stable flight. "Phoenix, I can see the damage. It is catastrophic. How are they even still flying?" "Because I am teaching them techniques that you and I learned at Edwards, Viper. How to fly when everything is broken. How to compensate for damage using differential thrust and asymmetric configuration. How to stay calm when the aircraft is trying to kill you. Can they land it? We are about to find out." For the next 23 minutes, something extraordinary happened. Rachel Morrison stood in a freezing, depressurizing cargo hold. The temperature was minus 40 degrees. The wind was screaming through the 12-foot hole at 500 miles per hour. The aircraft was shaking violently. Cargo containers were shifting. Straps were breaking. And from that position, holding onto a cargo strap with one hand and the intercom phone with the other, she guided 3 cargo pilots through flying a crippled aircraft using techniques she had learned from 18 years of test flying experimental jets. "Marcus, your hydraulic pressure is continuing to drop. Center system is now at 1,500 psi. Right system is at 2,800 psi. You have maybe 6 minutes before total hydraulic failure. What do we do when that happens?" Marcus asked, dreading the answer. "When you lose all hydraulics, the flight controls will revert to manual mode. That means the control surfaces will be connected directly to the control yoke by cables only. No hydraulic boost. No power assist. You will be muscle flying a 400,000-pound aircraft. It will take all 3 of you on the controls. Is that even possible?" "Yes. I have done it. But it requires perfect coordination. All 3 of you will need to pull together. Same direction. Same time. Same force. Like you are one person. Can you do that?" "We can try," David said. "Do not try. Do. There is no room for error. Now, let me explain what is going to happen. When the hydraulics fail completely, the controls will suddenly become very heavy. Extremely heavy. Like trying to turn the steering wheel on a car with no power steering. But 100 times worse. Sarah unbuckled from the flight engineer's station. She positioned herself between the two pilots. She put her hands on the control yoke, ready to help. "I am ready," she said. "Good," Rachel continued. "Now, you need to start descending. You need to get down to lower altitude where the air is thicker. Thicker air means more aerodynamic authority. More lift. More control. Start descending now at 1,000 feet per minute. Not faster. If you descend too fast, you will build up too much speed and you will not be able to control it." Marcus carefully reduced power on both engines. The aircraft began descending. Slowly. Controlled. Altitude, 29,000 feet. 28,000 feet. 27,000 feet. "What hit us?" David asked again. "You said it was a military drone. How do you know?" Rachel examined the debris more carefully. "I can see parts of the airframe. The serial number is partially visible, MQ-9-443. That is an Air Force MQ-9 Reaper. They are supposed to be restricted to military operations areas. This drone was deliberately flown into civilian airspace to hit us. But why? Why would someone attack a FedEx cargo plane? Because I am on this plane. 14 months ago, I faked my death to escape from people who wanted me dead. People who were covering up fatal design flaws in a fighter jet program. A $47 billion contract was at stake. When I tried to expose the truth, they tried to kill me. I staged my death to escape. I have been hiding for 14 months. But somehow, they found me. They tracked me to FedEx. And tonight they tried again." Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. "So we are collateral damage? They were trying to kill you and they did not care if they killed us too?" "Yes. I am sorry. If I had known they had found me, I would never have stayed in that cargo hold. I would never have put you at risk." "Well, you are going to help us land this plane," Marcus said. "And then you are going to tell us the whole story. Deal. Now, your hydraulic pressure just dropped below 1,000 psi on the center system. You have maybe 3 minutes before total failure. Start heading for Whitehorse now. Viper, can you give us a heading to Whitehorse?" Marcus transmitted. "Turn right to heading 045. Distance 118 miles. Field elevation 2,300 feet. Runway 13 left, 13,800 feet long, 200 feet wide. Emergency equipment is standing by." Marcus carefully turned the aircraft to heading 045. Using differential thrust and coordinated aileron inputs. The aircraft responded slowly but surely. "You are doing great, Captain," Rachel said. "You are a natural at this. How many hours do you have?" 19,000. "It shows. You have good hands. Smooth. You are not over-controlling. That is what kills most pilots when they have damaged aircraft. They over-control. They make big inputs. You are making small, smooth inputs. Perfect. You are a good teacher, Phoenix," Marcus said. Altitude, 24,000 feet. 23,000 feet. Descending steadily. Then, at 22,500 feet, the hydraulic systems completely failed. All 3 hydraulic systems dropped to zero pressure simultaneously. Total hydraulic failure. Sarah shouted. "All 3 systems are dead." The control yoke immediately became incredibly heavy. Like it was made of solid lead. Marcus pulled. Nothing happened. The yoke would not move. "David. Sarah. Help me." Marcus shouted. All 3 crew members grabbed the control yoke. 6 hands. 3 people. They pulled together with every ounce of strength they had. The yoke moved. Slowly. Inch by inch. Like trying to bench press 500 pounds. This is insane. David gasped. How long do we have to fly like this? About 20 minutes until landing, Rachel said calmly. You can do this. You are doing fine. Whitehorse Airport is 95 miles ahead. Altitude is good. Airspeed is good. You are in control. Just keep flying. At 14,000 feet, they were 40 miles from Whitehorse Airport. The aircraft was stable. Descending at a controlled rate. But every movement of the controls required enormous physical effort from all three crew members. Whitehorse Tower, this is FedEx 1285, Marcus transmitted. We are 40 miles south, inbound for emergency landing. We have major structural damage. Complete hydraulic failure. We are hand-flying on manual reversion. We will need the longest runway and all emergency equipment. FedEx 1285, Whitehorse Tower, you are cleared for straight-in approach runway 13 left. All emergency equipment is standing by. Wind is calm. Visibility 10 miles. Good luck. Phoenix, talk us through the approach, Marcus said. Rachel's voice remained impossibly calm. At 10,000 feet, slow to 200 knots. At 5,000 feet, lower the landing gear manually. The gear will freefall into position under gravity. It will take all three of you to move the gear lever. At 10,000 feet, Marcus and David carefully reduced power. The aircraft slowed. 240 knots. 220 knots. 200 knots. Airspeed 200 knots, David confirmed. At 5,000 feet, they reached for the landing gear lever. All three of them grabbed it together. On 3, Marcus said. 1, 2, 3. They pushed down with all their combined strength. The lever moved slowly. The mechanical linkage groaned. The gear doors opened. The massive landing gear assemblies fell down under gravity. Locked into place with a series of solid metallic clinks. 3 green lights illuminated on the panel. Landing gear down and locked. Gear down, 3 green, Sarah confirmed. Good, Rachel said. At 3,000 feet, extend flaps to 15 degrees. Be ready, it will be very hard to move the flap lever without hydraulics. At 3,000 feet, they moved the flap lever to 15 degrees. The flaps extended with agonizing slowness. Electric motors straining against the aerodynamic forces. Flaps 15, David confirmed. At 1,000 feet, full flaps. 30 degrees. At 1,000 feet, they moved the flap lever to 30 degrees. Full flaps. The aircraft slowed to 160 knots. The nose dropped slightly. They were configured for landing now. At 500 feet, Rachel's voice came through one more time. Listen to me carefully. You are going to land long and hard. Do not try to make this a smooth landing. Do not try to grease it. Your only goal is to get the aircraft on the ground and stopped. Land in the touchdown zone. Use maximum braking. Do not worry about the passengers because there are none. Do not worry about smooth ride quality. Just survive. Understood? Understood, Marcus said. At 300 feet, they could see the runway clearly ahead. 13,800 feet of concrete. Emergency vehicles lining both sides. Red and blue lights flashing everywhere. At 200 feet, Marcus made a small correction left. All 3 crew members pulled together. The aircraft responded. At 100 feet, they were lined up perfectly with the centerline. At 50 feet, Rachel's voice shouted, "Flare! Pull back now." All 3 crew members pulled back on the control yoke with every ounce of strength they possessed. Arms straining. Muscles screaming. Pulling. 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 The nose pitched up. The main wheels touched down on the runway. The impact was brutal. Violent. The main wheels slammed into the concrete at 170 miles per hour, 2,000 feet past the threshold. The aircraft bounced once. Hard. Then bounced again. Then finally settled onto the runway with all wheels on the ground. But the landing gear held. It did not collapse. The tires did not burst. Marcus, David, and Sarah all stood on the brake pedals. Maximum manual braking. No anti-skid system. No automatic brake application. Just pure hydraulic braking force from the accumulator tanks. The 767 rolled down the runway. 5,000 feet. 10,000 feet. The end of the runway was approaching fast. 11,000 feet. 12,000 feet. They were still going 80 miles per hour. 13,000 feet. 13,400 feet. The end of the runway was right there. The aircraft finally stopped with 1,400 feet of runway remaining. Complete silence in the cockpit. No engine noise. Marcus had cut the engines. No hydraulic pumps running. No alarms. Just the ticking sound of hot metal cooling and the whistle of wind. Then Sarah started sobbing. Deep, heaving sobs of relief and emotion. They had survived. They were alive. David was shaking uncontrollably. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely unbuckle his seatbelt. Marcus sat completely still for a moment. Then he picked up the intercom to the cargo hold. His voice was breaking with emotion. "Phoenix, we are down. We are safe. You saved our lives. All three of us would be dead without you. Thank you." Rachel's voice came back one final time from the cargo hold. "You three flew this aircraft. I just told you how. You did the impossible. You hand flew a crippled 767 with no hydraulics for 20 minutes and landed it safely. That is extraordinary piloting. Now get out of this aircraft before it catches fire. I will meet you outside." They opened the cockpit door. Emergency slides deployed automatically. They slid down onto the concrete runway. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft. Fire trucks spraying foam. Ambulances standing by. The rear cargo door opened. Rachel Morrison emerged. She was wearing FedEx cargo handler coveralls. Her face was blue from cold. Her hands were frozen. But she was alive. She walked toward the three pilots. Marcus, David, and Sarah stood staring at her. The woman who had saved their lives from a cargo hold. Marcus extended his hand. "Thank you does not seem like enough." Rachel shook his hand. Then David's. Then Sarah's. "You are welcome," she said simply. "You did good work up there. You should be proud." Viper's F-22 roared overhead. Performing a victory roll. Celebrating that Phoenix was alive. Celebrating that 5 people had survived what should have been a fatal attack. Within 6 hours, investigators from the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, and the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations descended on Whitehorse Airport. The drone wreckage was carefully recovered from inside the Boeing 767's fuselage. Every piece was photographed, catalogued, and analyzed. The evidence was overwhelming and conclusive. The drone was a United States Air Force MQ-9 Reaper. Serial number MQ-9-443. A classified variant with advanced stealth features. The drone had been deliberately programmed to intercept and strike FedEx Flight 1285 at exactly 4:04 a.m. at 31,000 feet over the Canadian Rockies. The flight path of the drone intersected the cargo plane's route with perfect precision. This was not an accident. This was not a malfunction. This was a planned, deliberate attack. The drone had been remotely piloted from a classified facility at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. Within 48 hours, the FBI and Air Force Office of Special Investigations made arrests. 3 senior Air Force officers, 2 generals and 1 colonel, who had been involved in the original cover-up of the F-51 fighter jet design flaw. 2 defense contractor executives from Lockheed Martin who stood to lose $47 billion if the F-51 program was cancelled due to safety concerns. 1 Air Force drone pilot, a captain, who had been paid $500,000 cash to eliminate a target without asking questions. The conspiracy became crystal clear during the investigations. After Rachel Morrison had faked her death 14 months earlier, she had disappeared completely. They searched for her. They assumed she was truly dead. For 14 months, there was no sign of her. But 3 weeks ago, someone spotted her. A defense contractor employee who had worked at Edwards Air Force Base recognized her face at the Memphis FedEx facility. He was certain it was Rachel Morrison. But that was impossible. She was dead. He took a photo with his phone. He ran it through facial recognition software. 97% matched to Rachel Morrison. He reported it up the chain. The report reached the generals who had covered up the F-51 design flaw. They realized she was alive. She was a witness who could destroy them. She had to be eliminated. They tracked her work schedule at FedEx. They discovered she was working cargo for Flight 1285. They saw their opportunity. A cargo plane over the Canadian Rockies. Remote area. Easy to make it look like an accident. They used their classified connections to task an MQ-9 Reaper drone. They programmed it to strike Flight 1285. They did not care that 3 innocent crew members would die. Collateral damage. Acceptable losses to protect billions of dollars and powerful careers. But they made one fatal mistake: they underestimated Phoenix. They did not know Rachel Morrison had 18 years of experience flying damaged aircraft. They did not know she could fly a crippled Boeing 767 from a cargo hold using nothing but an intercom phone. They did not know that you cannot kill someone who has already died once and risen from the ashes. The press conference. 1 week later, a press conference was held at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The room was packed with journalists from every major news organization in the world. This was the biggest military scandal in decades. At a long table sat Colonel Rachel Morrison, wearing her Air Force dress uniform with all her medals and ribbons. Her test pilot wings gleaming on her chest. Her colonel's eagles on her shoulders. Captain Marcus Hayes, First Officer David Chen, and Flight Engineer Sarah Mitchell. All 3 wearing their FedEx uniforms. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Harrison, Viper, representing the Air Force pilots who had assisted in the emergency. The Secretary of Defense. The Air Force Chief of Staff. The FBI Director. A reporter from CNN asked the first question: "Colonel Morrison, you faked your death 14 months ago. Can you explain why?" Rachel looked directly into the cameras. Her voice was clear, strong, and unwavering. 14 months ago, I was testing a new fighter jet called the F-51 Wraith. During a high-G maneuver test, the aircraft suffered catastrophic structural failure. The wings broke off. I ejected and survived. But when I examined the wreckage, I discovered a fatal design flaw. The wing attachment structure could not handle combat maneuvers. The aircraft would kill pilots. She paused. I reported this to my superiors. Senior Air Force officers. I showed them the evidence. And they told me to stay silent. Because the defense contractor had a $47 billion contract at stake. When I refused to stay silent, they threatened me. And then they tried to kill me by sabotaging my next test flight. So I used that sabotaged flight as cover. I faked my death. I disappeared. I changed my identity. I started a new life working at FedEx. And last week, another reporter asked. Last week, they found me. Someone recognized me. They tracked me to Memphis. They discovered I was working cargo for FedEx Flight 1285. And they sent a military drone to kill me. They flew that drone directly into a civilian aircraft. They did not care that 3 innocent crew members would die. They just wanted me dead. The room exploded with questions. Reporters shouting. Cameras flashing. Rachel raised her hand for silence. The 3 Air Force officers who ordered this attack have been arrested. The 2 defense contractor executives who financed it have been arrested. The drone pilot who carried it out has been arrested. They will all face trial for attempted murder, conspiracy, and violation of federal aviation regulations. What about the F-51 fighter jet? A reporter from the Washington Post asked. The Air Force Chief of Staff leaned forward. The F-51 program has been permanently cancelled. All aircraft have been grounded. The design flaws that Colonel Morrison identified have been confirmed by independent testing. She was right. That aircraft would have killed pilots. Her actions, though unorthodox, ultimately saved lives. What happens to you now, Colonel? A reporter asked. Rachel smiled slightly. The Air Force has offered me a position as Chief Test Pilot and Director of Flight Safety. My job will be to ensure that what happened to me never happens to another pilot. To make sure safety always comes before money. To make sure pilots who report problems are protected, not threatened. Will you accept? Yes. But I am keeping my call sign. Phoenix. Phoenix. Because they tried to kill me twice. Both times I rose from the ashes. That is who I am. That is who I will always be. Phoenix rises. 6 months later. Edwards Air Force Base, California. The memorial wall where the names of fallen test pilots are inscribed. Colonel Rachel Morrison stood in front of the wall. Her name had been removed. The inscription that had read, Colonel Rachel Morrison, killed in action, test pilot, was gone. Because she was not dead. She was alive. She was Phoenix. General Marcus Webb approached. The Air Force Chief of Staff. A 4-star general with 35 years of service. Colonel Morrison, the Air Force owes you an apology. A profound apology. We failed you. We should have protected you when you reported the design flaw. Instead, we threatened you. We drove you to fake your own death. That failure is on us. Rachel nodded. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We have an offer for you. Chief Test Pilot. Director of Flight Safety. You would oversee all experimental aircraft testing. You would have authority to ground any program that has safety concerns. No one, not contractors, not politicians, not generals, could overrule you on safety issues. Rachel looked up at the sky. F-22 Raptors were practicing overhead. Their engines roaring. The sound she had missed for 14 months. I will take the position. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I want all of my flying privileges restored. I want to fly again. Done. Second, I want to create a new training program. I want to teach every test pilot in the Air Force how to fly damaged aircraft. How to survive when systems fail. How to land when landing seems impossible. I want my techniques documented and taught to every generation of test pilots. Agreed. We will call it the Morrison Protocol. And third, I keep my call sign. I am Phoenix. That does not change. General Webb saluted her. A sharp, perfect military salute. Welcome back, Phoenix. The Air Force needs pilots who refuse to stay dead. Pilots who rise from the ashes. Pilots like you. Rachel returned a salute. Then she walked toward the flight line where an F-22 Raptor was waiting for her. Her aircraft. Her call sign painted on the canopy rail, Phoenix. She climbed into the cockpit. She strapped in. She started the engines. And Colonel Rachel Phoenix Morrison took off into the California sky. Because that is what a phoenix does. She rises. Again and again and again. No matter how many times they try to bring her down. She always rises. The Morrison Protocol became mandatory training for all U.S. Air Force test pilots. It teaches techniques for flying damaged aircraft. Differential thrust compensation. Manual reversion procedures. Emergency landing techniques. Rachel Morrison's methods have since been adopted by civilian aviation as well. Airlines now train pilots in some of her techniques. Her principles have saved countless lives. Captain Marcus Hayes, First Officer David Chen, and Flight Engineer Sarah Mitchell all received the Air Medal for heroism. They continued flying for FedEx. They remained close friends with Rachel Morrison for the rest of their careers. The 3 Air Force generals, 2 defense contractors, and the drone pilot were all convicted. They received sentences ranging from 15 to 35 years in federal prison. The F-51 fighter program was permanently cancelled. The $47 billion contract was terminated. The design flaws were made public. New oversight procedures were implemented to prevent future cover-ups. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Harrison, Viper, was promoted to colonel. He became the Deputy Director of Flight Safety, working directly under Rachel Morrison. And Rachel Morrison? She flew for another 15 years. She tested every new Air Force aircraft. She pushed the boundaries of what was possible. She taught hundreds of pilots her techniques. She never forgot the night she woke up in a cargo hold at 31,000 feet and saved 3 people's lives. She never forgot that she was Phoenix. The one who rises from the ashes. The one who cannot be killed. The one who always survives.